at this point, we're making a lot more than we did working, and don't put in hardly any hours.
Yeah. So when you get that monthly deposit of what is it, about 40 grand?
Yeah.
Nice. Does it feel as good as the first time, or does it start to get mundane?
You're checking out the Investor Shed podcast with Nick Beveridge and Jeremy Kitchen. They're on the path to financial freedom, and they're taking their community with them. Stay tuned for the best free real estate investing advice on the internet.
Everybody, welcome back to the Investor Shed podcast. I'm Nick Beveridge, and I am so excited today to present to you all, not the guest, not the co-host, but a new little trinket of a lidded house here. The house has been there, but it hasn't been lit up for ever. Now it is. What do you think, Jer?
Well, I think I'm the co-host. I'm being thrown absolutely under the bus for a little trinket, but it is a very cool trinket. Speaking of trinkets, we got Shawn Dolan on the podcast today. I love talking with Shawn. For anyone interested, Shawn has been on season 1 of the Investor Shed podcast, back when this was an archaic vision that Nick Beveridge had.
Yep.
We filmed it with a cell phone, and it was not the best quality, but Shawn provided a lot of good nuggets, as he always does. We had him back just to kind of do a touch-up on what he's been up to, and he gives great nuggets, and he gives great advice always, and he's just a good guy to talk to.
Yeah. Sean's a guy that you're going to want to listen to if you want to be a long-term real estate investor, because he's got 20 years of experience. He's owned 134 or 39 rentals at one time. 134.
Yep.
He's got right now 90, and the majority of them are paid off. Mm-hmm. And he built it all with a HELOC. He got a HELOC on his house, and he leveraged and was smart about his money.
Sure.
But he did it all creatively 20 years ago, and it was like a hockey stick. So we'll get into that.
Yeah. I love the way Shawn went about this, because if anyone's heard the show, obviously, like, this is the strategy I'm trying to implement as well. And Shawn he's got all of his ducks in the row for how he does it, and his systems are just great. So you're gonna want to stick around. You're gonna want to stick to the end, because he drops nuggets and bombs.
Yep. Everyone wants to be Shawn when they grow up. So grow up and listen to this podcast and eat your veggies. Eat some broccoli.
Ooh, okay. Is that the food we're going for this time?
It is this time.
Wow.
Unless someone would give us recommendations on YouTube, but that hasn't been happening lately, has it?
Yeah, hasn't been happening lately. We're staring at the two of you who give us comments. By the way, thank you so much.
Broccoli today. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Investor Shed podcast. Got a special guest today, Shawn Dolan. Thanks for coming.
Oh, thanks, Nick. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for being here, Shawn.
Yeah. So it's thanks to Shawn why we have video technology in our podcast. Because when I started the podcast, just a little background, I was just going to do audio only, and through the internet. I can't remember the software I was using at the time, or the online platform. Zinco.
It was pretty bad.
It was pretty bad. But I asked Shawn to be on the podcast, and he's like, "Sure, if I can come in and sit down."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Okay, we can work this out." And then we got all set up with the mics in the office, and then at the last minute, I think Jeremy threw up his cell phone or something like that. Let's get this on camera too.
Yep.
So ever since then, we've been filming them.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's because you were not archaic with our technology anymore.
Well, I wanted to come in because I basically didn't have a mic at home at the time.
Okay. Everybody won, so it was good. So if anybody hasn't actually followed Shawn's journey, Shawn was on season 1 of the Investor Shed podcast with Nick Beveridge. I'm sure a lot's changed, and I'm sure a lot's stayed the same, Shawn. But for everyone who hasn't heard kind of your story, can you kind of fill everyone in on what you've been up to?
Want to go from the start? Or
yeah,
what I've been up to
absolutely.
lately?
Yeah, brief overview.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Basically, we started out by buying a dumpy little duplex on the lower South Hill of Spokane back 20 years ago. And found out right away that when you buy multifamily properties or rentals, a lot of times the seller is telling you that their rents are something, and you find out that the tenants haven't been paying rent in months. So we went in and evicted the tenants, and new carpet, new paint, and were able to raise the rents. And a year later, we pulled some equity out and rolled it into another one and just kept building till we got to about 20 units in Spokane. And then I guess they call it the GFC now. The housing crash hit.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And we were in the process of combining our first and second mortgages on all of the properties, and we were down to just one left, one duplex. And the bank backed out and said they didn't want to combine them.
Okay.
So I said, well, what happens if we just continue paying? And they go, nothing. So that's what we did.
Great.
And we just kept managing it and paying, and kind of got to the repayment part. It was an interest-only second mortgage on that particular one, and went into the bank at that time. It was Wells Fargo, and said, okay, now we're the repaying of the principal part. It was interest only for 5 years. What do you want to do? And they said, would you like a 15, a 30, or a 10-year mortgage amortization with that? And I said, well, we'll do the 30. And
Sure.
they dropped the interest rate by 4 points, and
Nice.
life was a lot better.
Yeah, right.
My payment went down, and we just kind of managed what we had through that mess. And back in about 2016, 2017, I decided to find out what they were worth, and went and talked to a local multifamily broker in town. And at that point, he said, "Oh, probably about 1.8 million." And I looked at him and said, "Sell everything."
Get rid of it all, right?
It was just at the time that Washington State.
How long did it take you to decide to sell after you heard that?
Oh, about 30 seconds.
30 seconds. All right.
And at that time, Washington State was rewriting all their landlord-tenant laws and making it landlord hostile. And what we did is we did a 1031 into the Midwest, into Southern Illinois, and expanded our 20 doors up to 134 doors at the peak, and figured out that we could leave our day job at that point,
Right.
which was kind of nice. So 5 years ago, shed the W-2, and kind of just been living off the rental since. We've went through and pruned out some of the stuff, and found out that when you're too far scattered, and the property manager has to travel an hour and a half to get to a property, that they don't do so well managing. So
Sure.
we sold off the stuff that were outside of the main core that we were in.
Yeah. But how many again did you purchase after you sold your duplexes, and then you bought how many total doors at your peak?
We went from the 20 doors in Spokane, Washington, up to 100 doors in Southern Illinois. And when we left my W-2 job, I was able to take my retirement plan and convert it to a self-directed 401k.
Nice.
And then bought another 34 doors. So we were up to 134 doors at one time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. 20 to 134.
Yep, 20 to 134.
But it took 14 years to acquire 20.
Yeah. It's mostly because when the GFC hit, we kind of hit pause.
Sure.
Because the bank said we had enough, and I was working insane hours at the power company at the time, and trying to keep the wife happy and at least show up at home once in a while.
Right.
Yeah.
But during that 14 years, the properties that you did acquire and you held on to, did mortgages change on you, and did rents go down?
No. Rents stayed flat and then started climbing. You know,
Okay.
It's interesting that, there was a number of years where nobody was raising their rents, even though using the economy as the reason. So we just kind of managed through that. And after a while, people started raising their rents, and so did we.
Right.
Yeah.
That really increased our net worth at that point.
Okay. Just to get this across, though, but you bought before the big old mess of 2008, 9, 10.
Yeah.
And but your rents didn't go down.
No, they didn't
Yeah.
go down.
So you were fine.
Yeah, the first
It was-
winter of the GFC, we had about 25% of the tenants decided that they didn't have to pay rent because the economy was bad.
Okay.
Sure.
Yep.
And we got rid of them and refilled it, and just kept managing it. It worked fine, provided extra spending money,
All right.
and grew in value over time.
So your timeline kind of reminds me of a hockey stick. Does that sound familiar
Yeah,
in business?
yeah. Very much
Hockey
so.
stick growth. Yep.
Long, steady, a lot of work, and then just things shot up like crazy. So you
Yep.
got up to 134 rentals. At what point did you decide maybe you should cut some of them?
Well, we were having problems with our property manager. He wasn't doing a great job on the distance stuff. We had 3 houses in Carbondale, Illinois, that needed to get turned. He wasn't getting it done. He kept using the excuse that the maintenance guys didn't want to drive the hour down there to do it. So I would fly in and clean them up, paint them, rehab them, and decided to put a sign in the front yard of one of them saying rent to own,
Okay.
and see if I could take care of it myself since he wasn't getting the job done. And the guy that owned the building behind me called, and he owned a number of houses in that neighborhood, and asked if I had any others. I'm going, yeah, I got 3 in this neighborhood. And he arranged a seller finance for him and sold all 3 of them to him.
Nice.
Nice.
So
Okay. So you still own the notes on some of these properties?
yeah, I think I still have 17 years to go before he pays me off.
Okay.
Nice.
6% interest. So
Yeah, not
Gotcha.
bad.
So you went down from 134 to 90, but if you don't mind, do you know how many units you have that you're still getting paid on seller financing?
yeah. We've got 3 houses in Carbondale, Illinois.
Uh-huh.
And then we have a triplex up in Centralia, Illinois that we sold on seller financing. So we've got basically a triplex and 3 houses that we did seller financing on.
Okay.
That
Nice.
will get paid for quite a while.
So not all is lost.
No, actually came out quite well on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we could dig in just a little bit before we move on, Jeremy, what kind of things did you learn over the last 20 years of investing when it comes to, like, you started off right away talking about trusting, like the seller that you bought the property from represented that the property is bringing in this kind of income and it wasn't, and the seller, then you had tenant issues. In your 20 years being a real estate investor, how important is your trust with people and your gut feelings versus what you see on paper?
Basically, I don't believe what I see on paper. It's
Okay.
kind of, some people say trust but verify. I say,
Yep.
well, take what they give you as a start and start doing your due diligence and
Right.
verify.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. The reason, because I haven't been an investor nearly as long as you, but for everything that I've learned, it seems like the math doesn't matter on a spreadsheet, and it's almost all about your gut feeling.
Right.
And I could be totally wrong on that, but like how many times has your gut been right versus wrong?
More often than not.
That's a good ratio for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure.
Was there ever a time where your gut told you, I don't know if I feel right about this, but everything was fine because it made sense on paper? Or did you just not get into those kind of situations?
It seems like most sellers try to shine the apple a little bit to make it appear better than it is. So when I get a pro forma from a realtor or a broker, I treat it as, okay, as if you want me to believe this. Now, what are the real numbers? And start looking into it.
Right.
And then base my offer on what I believe a closer number is.
So do you look at their projections as, okay, so this is on the high, way optimistic, probably not going to happen scale, so let's see how far down?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. I've been known to be a very patient negotiator.
Yeah, okay.
We had one deal that took us 6 months to come to an agreement on price. They started out at, I think, at $360,000 for a 16-plex, and 6 months later, I bought it for $250,000.
Nice.
Nice.
I just wore them down.
Gently beat them down over 6 months. Eventually, you'll get where you need to go, right?
Yeah, they hadn't done any work on it in 30 years. It needed a lot of work.
Sure.
Rents were the same as they were 30 years ago. So
Yeah. And Sean, I kind of want to talk real quick about your strategy, about how you acquired all these properties. I know we kind of briefly touched on it, but it's something I've always admired about what you've done. So you took an interest-only loan out on some of your properties, and you took a HELOC. Is that correct?
Yeah, I started out with a $60,000 HELOC on our primary residence, and we used that as down payment money on the duplexes we started with.
Awesome. And then, so obviously once you got that ball rolling, you're just refinancing from there. So you get one, refinance, pay it off, or pay off your HELOC, and then do another property. Is that kind of what you did?
Yeah, exactly. We'd fix it up. Bigger Pockets would call it the Burr method now.
Sure. Yeah. I just think
was
it's just
way
such a
before Bigger
fantastic...
Pockets was a twinkle in anyone's eye.
Right.
Yeah.
I just think the way you were to acquire these properties is so beneficial for the average person, right? That has just one house and has some equity. Like, it's a strategy I'm trying to implement too. Obviously, I have a HELOC, but it's hard to invest with a HELOC right now, with rates being at 9%, right? So if I'm gonna lend out my HELOC, it's gonna cost me more than just getting a bank loan. So.
Well, it's all relative, Jeremy.
Mm-hmm.
When we were starting, most of our mortgages were at 8%.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And, this low interest rate period we've had for the last, 5 to 7 years has really been a gift.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like it's been longer than that. I remember when I got my first mortgage on my first house, it was 2008. And I think it was a 5.75, and everyone around me was like, "That is the lowest rate I've ever seen."
Yeah. Well, when we
Never
bought
go
our
lower.
current house, I think our interest rate was 5.25,
Mm-hmm.
and since refinanced it down into the mid threes. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
Do you chuckle in your head when you hear everybody around you in the industry say, "I'm going to wait for rates to come down before I start investing"? I want them to be back down in the 3s or 4s.
a little bit, they may not get back down that low again. The 2s and 3 period we had was really the exception, not the norm.
Right.
It really comes down to, does the deal pencil?
Mm-hmm.
If you can get it to pencil at these interest rates and still make some monthly cash flow off of it, then do the deal.
Yeah.
If interest rates drop, then you refinance and your income goes up.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you mind if we set a minute and just talk about your due diligence and how we get deals to actually pencil?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. I mean, like, so what's your process? How do you actually dive into a deal, and what makes the deal worth it for you?
Okay. Basically, we start out with the pro forma from the realtor, if they have one. If they don't, from the owner, tell us what your rents are, ask to see all the leases, find out what the utilities are, what the taxes are. I just kind of back of a napkin start adding it up. And in fact, been at it long enough, I know what the vacancy rates will probably be. And
Sure.
when we buy a property, usually we jettison about a quarter of the tenants in the first 3 months, because we find that there's usually that many that aren't doing paying their rent or bad tenants.
Sure.
And we refill them. I do a little research to find out what the actual market rent is, and then figure what kind of increases I can realistically get with the units once they're cleaned up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just pencil it out. And if I don't have at least a 10% cash on cash return, I keep looking.
There you go.
Negotiate harder on the price.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, since you've been at this for a long time, and you probably have a pretty good idea of what actual expenses versus some newer people out there. What are some of the things that maybe not everybody thinks about that truly is the most expensive item maybe they're not accounting for? Is it vacancy, taxes, a partner, interest?
Kind of all of the above. You look at the principal, interest, taxes, insurance for sure.
Sure.
And then you have to factor in maintenance level for the building. A lot of people forget that.
Maintenance.
And if you do a decent job on maintenance, we've kind of analyzed it, and we factor in about 20%.
Okay.
Okay, so
Gross
after
rents.
okay, that's after you've renovated the property too. You figure another 20%.
That's kind of in the process.
Sure, okay.
We don't always renovate a property in one fall swoop because we own a lot of multifamily.
Okay. That's a pretty big number to set aside, 20%.
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
always roofs that you have to replace and
That
furnaces.
seems
and,
very realistic because I know a lot of the spreadsheets that I see, they kind of like the default is usually 5 or 10.
Yeah, I see like 5 or 6 on all
on
the
a
sheets.
brand new property that might work.
Sure.
Yeah.
On an older property that needs some love, 20% is what I factor in.
Sure.
Now,
Factor in for the property manager.
is that for CapEx and repairs? Or do you kind of keep those separate,
It's-
or is it a
kind of lumped in.
Lumped in. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, I look at it as a cash in, cash out,
Sure.
return on cash approach.
Okay. So, I mean, you're looking for, like, you're obviously, like you said, you 10% cash on cash return in your first year. You got 20% for your CapEx and expenses. And then are you factoring like 10% for management, or how much are you?
Yeah. 10% for property management, 10% for vacancies.
Sure. You start adding up these numbers and it's weird. Like where does your money actually come from and how do you make money on these things? But,
It can be a challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of sellers out there that want really high numbers. They still think it's in a low interest market.
Yep.
You still see a lot of properties with, cap rates in the 6 to 7%. And it's like, sorry, interest rates are at 8 to 10 for multifamily. So
Yeah.
you're going to have to come down a lot.
Yeah. Interested in the property, but just not at what we got at right here. And like you said, you're the patient negotiator. And I think that's really cool. A lot of people, they just want to make an offer very quickly and then move on. You're obviously putting like a lot of heart into these things. If you're interested in a property, like, you're not scared to negotiate with people. And I think that's a really unique skill you have there, Sean.
Yeah. And you don't get flippant about it. You just say, well, here's what I can afford to pay you. And
Yeah.
when it hasn't sold a few months later, you come back and say, well, remember this offer that I put on the table? Well, it's still here.
Yeah. Might be lower, but it's still here.
So what kind of tips do you have for the newer investors today that maybe don't have a whole lot of money set aside, but maybe they have a job and they really just want to get started investing? What do you recommend? Do you recommend they just start in their own backyard, or they go to the Midwest, single family, multifamily? Do you have like a blanket recommendation for most new people, or
I
what do you
would say
think?
it depends on what they're looking to do.
Yeah.
If they think they're going to get rich quick, perhaps they ought not to consider real estate.
Yeah. It's true.
Man, that's the truest statement I've ever
Yeah,
heard.
it's one of those things where
You can go broke quick.
you can go broke quick.
I've done that.
You can make big chunks of money flipping in the right market with the right property. It's a lot of work. You can also lose a lot of money on it.
Yeah.
Also, I
Yeah.
used to be in an investment group, and there was a number of people that were really excited about flipping. And I remember one fellow that bought this house over by the municipal airport in Spokane. He was all excited about flipping, and he worked on that house for a year. And I kept asking him, well, how's it going? And I felt sorry for him, so I went and gave him a weekend and did a lot of the wiring for him to get it working. And he so over improved that property, I was thinking to myself, it's too nice for the neighborhood. He spent way too much money. And when he got to finally sell it, he had to sell it for $20,000 less than he had into it.
Yikes.
Yeah.
That's
So
a
he
pretty common thing, I
spent
think.
a year of his life and lost $20,000.
Hopefully, you had a good time.
Well, hopefully you learned something
Nice
to go on to the
job.
next one, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I've done a lot of that lately.
yeah.
Here's something, though, about fixing and flipping that I've learned, because I've done a lot of fix and flips. But the actual amount of money that you make at the end of the day, when, like you said, requires a ton of work.
Yep.
It's a lot of work to get these properties, find these deals. It's a lot of work to get them under contract. It's a lot of work to get them funded. It's a lot of work to get your insurance. And then it's a hell of a lot of work to actually improve the property on time.
Yep.
Not get distracted, not go over budget. It always happens.
Yeah.
Holding costs drag on, and you're usually crying at some point. And then you finally get it fixed up and it looks beautiful, and you sell it, and you look at the small the small amount of money you actually made, and if you try to figure your dollar per hour, it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
They all
But
watch
then you
this
just
flip
keep
this
doing it.
house thing on TV and think they're going to make $100,000 on a flip.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
there are some flips they do.
Yeah.
And
It's funny, the last couple of ones that I've done, I kind of think to myself, man, the guy that had the dumpster, he makes so much more money than me. He just comes and and he's in and out in a day or two, and he makes a couple $1,000.
Yep.
Man, imagine if I just got my dumpster and only offered that service, I'd be making more than a house flipper.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Probably a lot less stress, less risk. So I think house flippers, they do it for more than just the money.
Sure.
At least I do. It just feels good to take a property and turn it into something nice.
Yeah.
It's kind of
It
like
does.
restoring an old car. It just gets you high.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it looks nice
Yeah.
when you're done.
Yeah.
You know, owning a lot of properties, you're kind of doing perpetual flips after tenants move out,
Sure.
and you learn not to put too much into it, but to make it look nice,
Sure.
so you can rent it to the next person and hopefully raise the rents a little bit. Real estate in my world's kind of a long game. It's not short-term riches. You do get there. It just takes a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always nice having that self-liquidating debt the tenants are paying for.
Yeah.
We're down to the point where we should have the last apartment building paid off this spring, so we're looking forward to that.
Nice.
How long did it take before you had life-changing money started coming in regularly?
Well, even when we shed, it was about 5 years ago that we shed the W-2, and it replaced my income at that point. And at that point, it was just kind of an income replacement thing.
Sure.
And it took us 15 years to get to that point,
Okay.
just because we kind of did the slow and steady thing.
Yeah.
And COVID was kind of a mixed bag, but on all in all, it left us a lot stronger at the back end of it. And at this point, we're making a lot more than we did working, and don't put in hardly any hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you get that monthly deposit of what is it, about 40 grand,
Yeah.
Nice.
does it feel as good as the first time, or does it start to get mundane?
No, it never gets mundane. I look at the monthly owner draws and cackle like a schoolgirl.
There you go.
You parade it around
Yeah.
I don't parade it around, but
the house. I mean,
Sean,
I
real
would
quick.
I
go
would
ahead.
just run around with my laptop and show my kids constantly. Look!
Look at my spreadsheets. I think it's more important you teach them like what money is than like how much you have of it. But that's that's a different story.
Yeah, that's a challenge with kids because they
Yeah.
always think they know more than mom and dad.
Sure.
Oh, they do.
I have a son that my youngest one just graduated from law school,
Okay.
and we've been hammering on him for 15 years trying to get him interested in real estate and understand the business. And
Yep.
it's like, yeah, Dad, I know. And he spent a couple summers working for a lawyer in Spokane, and he'd come home. He goes, yeah, he showed me all these houses that he has and says what a great plan it is. And I'm looking at him like,
Oh, weird.
weird.
Oh, he showed you that.
What do you think I've been trying to tell you for
Yeah.
15, 20 years?
Gosh.
That's interesting. Yeah, I definitely, I have a 15-year-old too, and like getting her like interested in finances is, I'd rather hit my head against a wall, to be honest with you. So you just do what you can and try to set them up as best as you can.
Yeah, I think until they're 30, they think they know everything, and then they realize the old man wasn't as dumb as they thought. growing
We're
up.
actually right. We're actually trying to spill some knowledge on
Yeah. No, I can validate that. In my 20s, I felt like I knew more than anybody around me until life started to happen. I'm like, I guess I don't.
you. I'm pretty green, actually.
It took a while.
Yeah.
It took till probably I hit 30 till I realized I don't know shit in this world.
Yeah.
And it's not just us. I've
Yeah.
talked to some pretty famous real estate investors over the years, and was having a beer with Ken McElroy last summer, and he made the same comment about his boys. They're finally getting into real estate.
Sure.
And
Oh,
he's
nice.
so excited about that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's always fun seeing Kid McElroy around town. I've only seen it once. I just saw him at downtown Sherman once, but it's pretty cool to
Yeah, he's a really
Real estate
laid-back,
celebrity.
nice guy.
Yeah. He's
in
awesome.
town. Yeah.
Real quick, Sean, I want to talk about one other strategy you did. So this is something I'm trying to implement as well, in a kind of a different way though. But you talked about your 401k, and then you turned it into a self-directed 401k. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. And then you're able to buy houses in that 401k, and then you avoid UBIT in your 401k as well, correct?
You do.
Okay, very cool. How many houses have you bought with your 401k, if you don't mind me asking?
My 401k has 10 houses and 3 8-plexes.
That's awesome. And it's something to remember that, like, yeah, you have these retirement accounts, and you can do cool things with them. You don't have to buy mutual funds or stocks, or you don't have to go, the Fidelity route and do whatever they tell you. You can self-direct that, and then you can leverage that and buy real estate. So it's just a cool strategy. So,
And the nice thing is I actually make more per month off of my 401k than I did working.
awesome.
And you've got real estate that's appreciating over time, and at the end you're going to end up with more money to pass on to your heirs.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
if you did the mutual fund thing, you eventually consume it all.
Sure.
And you end up with nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's all I kind of want to touch on that, though. So I'm definitely interested in the self-directed strategies. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what tips do you have for newer investors that just simply have no idea even what they want? If you just had to say, if you had to kick someone in the right direction, what way, how would you kick them, and how hard, if somebody wanted to be kicked?
Yeah. I actually meet with and try to mentor a bunch of new investors. I always happy to have coffee with them and
Yeah.
try to guide them a little bit. A lot of it's seeing what they're interested in. A lot of them try the wholesaling thing,
Right.
playing the bird dog. It's a good way to start without any cash, but it's a lot of work too.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've tried it, you know that. And then
Yeah.
they want to do the fix and flip.
I never understood why people got into wholesaling thinking that it's a good way to start with no cash, because it seems like they spend more money than I do on marketing, and but maybe I'm wrong. It just, a lot of the wholesalers I know, they spend a lot of money on marketing to try to get into real estate with nothing down.
They do. They do.
It just seems silly to me.
Yeah, I suggest they try to find a partner
Right.
and, work with someone that can help mentor them through the process where they get some skin in the game from their sweat off their brow.
Sure.
There's a lot of older investors that don't want to work that hard. I'm getting quite lazy in my old age.
And you deserve it too, though. And that's the thing too, Sean. Like, obviously, like, deals typically come down to like time, money, knowledge, and the deal itself. A lot of these people, if they don't have the money, like, they're going to go find something else. If they have the time to do it, maybe that is wholesaling. I do like what you said though about partnering. I just think that's such a viable way to get started. If you've got a little bit of cash or a little bit of knowledge, partner up with somebody else who doesn't have what you need, and make it work.
Yeah. If you have someone that maybe has the cash and you've got the time to do the work or whatever. If you want to do the flip thing, maybe have a financial partner help you.
Yep.
Well, you do the work, but listen to what your partner says
Oh yeah.
and get a little bit of cash built up. And then as you can, either start converting these flips to a few of them to long-term holds or pick up long-term holds as you go.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I did, I was kind of a bottom feeder, and the first few buildings we got were in pretty rough shape.
Mm-hmm.
And we cleaned them up and raised the rents and raised the value, kind of forced the appreciation.
Sure.
My current portfolio is a lot nicer. I found that the nicer buildings are a whole lot less work,
Oh yeah.
and you get better quality tenants.
Okay. Are you still focused in on one market in the Midwest, or have you expanded? Or are you even buying anymore? Or are you good?
We have a real comfortable level of a number of units with, most of them paid off, and soon the last one will be paid off. We'll probably still keep our eyes open. If a good deal comes up, pounce on it. I toyed with the idea of maybe doing some syndicating. Gone to
Okay.
a few classes on that. Just comes down to what perks our interest.
Yeah. What about syndicating interests you?
The bigger deals,
Yep.
larger apartment complexes, that kind of stuff. But, it got so overdone and the prices got pushed so high compared to what they generated. The last few years, it just wasn't worth even diving into that market. Perhaps in the next year as sellers become a little more realistic with their pricing.
Yeah. Are you seeing a trend of that pricing going down at all in the multifamily?
You're seeing a little bit of it. It's going to have to happen more.
Mm-hmm.
There's always deals out there you negotiate down. We were looking at, I'm always looking online at different properties, and there was one in South Dakota that was priced reasonably, and it went under contract right away, and I see it just fell out of contract, and they're back on the market. You're starting to see a lot of that. Properties coming back on as they can't get financing, as banks constrict the access to capital.
Sure.
Yeah.
I've talked to a couple aspiring investors lately, Sean, and they've been trying to dial in a market. It's very hard for them to pick a place where they want to invest. Do you have any advice for somebody who's looking for their first or second investment deal, or how you exactly go about picking a market. Do you have any advice on that?
If they're just starting out, I'm a big fan of starting out looking in your own backyard, just because it's so much easier to deal with problems if you can just drive over and handle it yourself.
Sure.
When it's across the country, you have to rely on property managers and them handling it. Or if they can't handle it, you have to get directly involved, and that may involve you flying out to deal with the situation.
Sure.
So it's good to start learning in your backyard, and then as you get that experience and understand how to manage properties and people, then you can expand it elsewhere and find different markets that may offer a higher rate of return.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything you want to add on that, Nick?
Yeah. No, I think that's great advice. I totally agree. That's why I didn't say anything.
Yeah, I give you an anecdote. I have a friend whose son got all excited about investing, and he ran into and bought a duplex in, I think it was Cincinnati or Cleveland, Ohio, and thought it was a great price. And I kind of gave him some advice of negotiating and finding a property manager. And he found some guy off of the internet that had some good reviews and hired him as the property manager. And he got rent checks for a couple months, and then they just ceased. And he called after about 5 months of that and was panicking. And I said, well, what's going on? He goes, I don't know. It's just silent. The guy won't even answer his phone. And I said, well, hop on a plane, fly over, find out if they're rented or not. If they are rented, regain control, fire the property manager, find someone else, and go talk to realtors and other people that own multifamily buildings in that community and get references and hire someone reliable. And he found out that the reviews online were a total scam.
Wow.
Oh. So the guy was just collecting rent and not sending it.
And not sending it.
Wow.
Wow. All right. Yeah. So referrals are important.
They are important.
Don't believe everything you see online, kids.
Ooh.
Yeah. this goes back to due diligence, like you were talking about too, like trust but verify, but you absolutely should be.
Yeah, and I always go look at properties that we're interested in person. It's amazing what people can do with pictures. And
Yes.
you look at stuff, you may look at it online, it looks awesome. You go in person, it's like, whoa, this is dated. When did they take those pictures? The roof's falling in or something like that.
It kind of reminds me when I was a brand new real estate agent in Florida, the market was a mess and there was tons of shadow inventory. And there was a scam going on of these people that would take these vacant homes owned by banks that weren't listed, and they would break into them and get the locks changed and advertise them for rent and get the first and last month's rent and hand them the keys, and then they never heard from that person again. And then eventually the bank catches on or that, hey, there's people living in this house, and it would take so long for people to catch on to this stuff. It was happening all over the place in our county.
There's still quite a bit of that going on.
Is there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
my property manager said that they've gotten calls from people that have told them that they've rented properties that were already rented and occupied, and they found out that they were the property managers and said, hey, we provided first and last month's rent and a deposit, and we go to move in and there's already someone there. What's going on? And they're talking to some guy in Pakistan that had them PayPal the money over.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Oh, they're doing it from overseas.
Yeah, they are.
Wow.
And it's happening quite a bit.
Or if they use somebody on what is that, Rabbit or something, to change out the locks?
Well, they didn't even change out the locks. They would take like an old rental listing off Zillow or something and market it as their own and collect the money. And
Interesting.
people would show up to move in. And
you said that happened to you, Sean?
It's happened to a few of our properties.
Okay.
We already had them rented. We ran pretty much 100% full all summer. And they said, they were having people show up saying, hey, we paid this money to some guy with a heavy foreign accent. It's like, don't know what to tell you. It's not us.
Yeah.
So did you have to get involved there, or did you let your property manager deal with it?
They dealt with it. They basically said, sorry, you got scammed by someone on the internet. And, they don't have the legal right to rent the property, and it's been rented. So,
Right.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that scam is going on.
Yeah. And
Any other interesting stories like that? Or do we have enough time?
Yeah, I don't know that you have enough time.
Okay.
When I was working, the staff at the company always said that I had the most interesting stories and that I should write a book. Tales of a forlorn landlord or something like that.
What's the most interesting story that you've never really told, at least here on this podcast?
Well, there's a few. Every time you think you've seen it all, someone surprises you.
Mm-hmm.
We had one lady that had rented a place, and then getting rent out of her was a bit of a challenge. And she was going around to all the churches and getting them to pay her rent for a while.
Okay.
And every time I would pound on the door to collect the rent, she would answer the door totally nude and try to invite me in. And it's like, nope, I'm staying out here in the breezeway where the cameras are.
Yep.
Oh, boy.
Wow.
And we eventually evicted her, and she got a legal aid attorney, and his argument was we had to provide legal accommodations because she was crazy.
Wait, would she answer the door with a towel on or
Nope,
nothing?
Nothing.
Just like, hey, check it out.
I guess.
Wild.
You don't want rent, you want this.
The answer was no.
Nope.
But so the lawyers cut a deal where she could have like another month and a half to find a place to leave, and she would be out on a certain date. And I was actually had scheduled to go fishing with my father-in-law, so I had my cleanup crew scheduled to go over and clean up the place.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a few days past the date, so gave them the key, and they went over and out casting my line, and the phone rings, and they're going, "She's still here."
Uh-huh.
And she's totally naked, rocking in the corner. What do we do?
Shoot her.
No.
Just kidding.
So maybe she was
okay.
nuts. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sounds like it.
But
Or
but
she
Sean,
just couldn't afford clothes.
it sounds like you keep like a really level head through all this stuff. Like, I think that comes from years of experience too, just kind of dealing with these things. But it's how hard is it to not be emotional? Like when somebody doesn't pay you rent or somebody messes up your property. How hard is it to make just strict like business decisions based off that?
Yeah, you learn to have a thick skin.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a very emotional person and that stuff bothers you, being a landlord's probably not for you.
Right.
Honestly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I found when you have to get a non-paying tenant out, if you just keep a very calm demeanor and just say, "Hey, we need to part company. This isn't working."
Mm-hmm.
It keeps them from blowing up and getting really aggressive with you. And
Yeah.
a fair percentage of the time you can talk them out, get them to move on their own. If not, you just say, "Well, here's the process we're going to go through," and get the lawyer involved as soon as you can, and
Yeah.
file the paperwork.
Easy peasy.
Yep.
Gotcha. Boy. All right. So you've come to our meetings quite a bit, and I love your introductions.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Where you basically, once in a while, you're like, "And I don't do shit." But that's not true. What do you like to do with your new lifestyle?
Well, the thing that I appreciate the most is the freedom to do what I want when I want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Basically, I don't report to a boss, except for my wife, maybe. I guess she's the boss.
Is she, though? I guess so.
Well, she thinks she is, so.
How does she like? Is she still working, or is she?
No, I retired her the month before I retired from my W-2.
Nice.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, she was having some health problems at the time, and it was our way to spend some more time together, and it was a good decision. It was the right one for us.
Sure.
Yeah.
Very cool.
But yeah, in the last 5 years, I maybe set the alarm and was woken up by an alarm 5 times.
Wow.
Okay, can't say the same.
Yeah. Like, I got 5 alarms that go off daily.
The wintertime, I kind of look at the forecast, and the nice bluebird days, I go skiing.
Nice. Do you have any personal question? Do you have any second homes or any plans to get a second home, maybe in another state, or do you enjoy the winters here?
Well, I've been trying to talk the wife into maybe doing the snowbird thing, but she's taking care of her father who has Alzheimer's at the moment. So
Okay.
that's not in the
Not on the
cards for a
table
while
right now.
But
Sure.
kind of been eyeballing maybe a lake place here.
Okay. Awesome. What do you most look forward to now that you can wake up with confidence that you can pretty much do whatever you want? Like what do you most look forward to in a day?
I at this point I often wonder how I had time to work.
So much to do.
Oh, there is.
Yeah.
From working around the property to, like when her father started showing signs of Alzheimer's, we helped to get him moved over and rehabbed his house and cleaned it up. And if I was working, I couldn't do that. We spent several months of time doing that.
I've noticed that. So my wife hasn't been working for a few years now, and she's always busy. And you don't need to go to work to be busy. It seems like there's plenty of work to do around the house, take care of the dogs, the kids, go on walks. Like I've always kind of thought to myself, if you're not working, what are you doing? But there's plenty to do, isn't there?
There is. Yeah, I often thought I would have a hard time with retirement. It took about 6 months to slow down, get in the groove. And there's always something to do.
Very cool.
Awesome. What else you got, Jeremy?
Well, we're just kind of going with the conversation right now. We're kind of on some personal stuff, and like you said, you went from getting these units, and now you're kind of slowing down, and you're looking at syndications, and you might get a lake house, obviously, and you do a lot of mentoring, which is really great. What do you look for in a mentee when somebody wants to be mentored by you?
I really don't look for anything. It's just, people approach me at the RIAs and ask if they can have coffee, and I'll say sure and give them a card. And the ones that call and want to visit, I'll meet with them and listen to their story and ask a few questions and say, well, have you considered this approach? And, some people meet with me reoccurring, once a month or whatever. And some people it's once or twice. And a year later, I'll hear back and they have another question.
There you go.
Yeah.
And it depends on the pace and how much input they want.
Yeah.
If somebody's newer at this and they did want to be mentored by you, what could they expect to have to kind of pony up in return, as far as probably more than just buying you lunch, right?
No.
Okay. So everybody sign up now. I'm just kidding. Because there are people that have coaching programs and locally here and different kind of things. I just think it's awesome that you are willing to teach somebody pretty much anything they need to know, as long as they ask. But it's funny, no matter how bad some people need this or want it, they just don't ask you, do they?
Yeah, that's fine. That's if they don't want help, that's fine too. Yeah, I know some of the mentoring programs out there, they charge people a lot of money, and I don't. It may cost them a cup of coffee, and that's about it. And it's my way of giving back to the community.
Yeah,
that's
I had to
awesome.
buy my lunch. I could have got away with just a coffee.
Times have changed, Nick.
I'm just kidding.
Sean's feeling the effects of the economy. He'll go for just a coffee.
What are some of the biggest mistakes you've made in your investing career?
Well, we all have them.
Yeah.
It's like the three houses in Carbondale, Illinois. And
So wrong location?
Yeah. On the surface, it seemed like a great location. University of Southern Illinois is there. So you thought you'd have a lot of tenants, and found out that the student population was less than half of what it was a couple of years ago because of some challenges that the administration had done, and all the good students had left and gone to other universities.
Gotcha.
And, when the realtor said, it's a new and up-and-coming neighborhood, and found out that that's code for you don't want to buy there.
New up and coming.
Yeah.
It's coming soon.
But, we turned lemons into lemonade and, did the owner financing thing. The guy that bought told me over the phone once that he was almost embarrassed to tell me what he was renting them out for. And he told me, it's like, good for you, man.
Yeah.
As long as you keep paying the mortgage, I don't care what you rent them out for.
Sure.
So he was making a lot of money, and I was getting a good return on my money. And
How do you come across these owner finance deals, by the way? Are you actively marketing, or are you just, putting feelers out in the neighborhood and then people call you, or what's your strategy
Well, in this
for that?
case, I was the financer. He was the
Okay.
buyer.
Okay, gotcha.
I did buy a package of houses early on that was owner financed. And I was doing a 1031 into the area, bought a package of like 24 doors, and needed to have a certain price to make the 1031 work without me having to pay taxes on the boot part.
Sure.
And approached the owner and said, would you consider doing owner financing on the remainder for 5 years, say at 6%, we'll amortize it for 15
Yeah.
with a balloon in 5? And he said, fine.
Cool.
I think we paid it off in 3.
There you go.
With your seller financing deals, do you escrow that directly, or do you have a third party that is involved with making payments and receiving payments?
With the ones where I was the financer, we set it up through an escrow company where they're paying an escrow company. And the escrow company will give them their 1099 at the end of the year and track and give them a monthly statement as to, how much is going to interest, how much to principal, what the escrow fees are. They give us a statement and then direct deposit it into our account.
Okay. Have you ever done a contract for deed versus seller financing?
I haven't. I do have the paperwork for it, and I have a friend that's done it.
Okay. Gotcha. Do you ever pass up on really good opportunities these days?
It depends. It depends on. I get stuff from wholesalers all the time and look at it, and if it's on the Washington State side of the line, I just don't even go any further. It may seem like a great deal, but the landlord-tenant laws are such that it's just not worth it.
Sure.
Gotcha. What are your thoughts on subject to?
I think it's probably a really good up-and-coming strategy for where the market is now and will be in the next couple of years. I have a friend that's done about 10 subject to deals. He was also a house flipper, so he would use it as the underlying finance to pick up the property, and then he would flip it and then sell it, clear out the...
I'm doing that right now. Well, most likely, I think I'll find out today if he's going to accept. He wants to do it. He just wants to run it by his brother. But I'm buying a house that I'm going to do a fix and flip on, and offer the guy terms, the subject to terms. Explained it to him. Explained why I can get him a little bit more money doing that versus getting a new hard money loan. And just walk through all those details and the potential risks that come along with it, and my intentions and plans. But just by going the subject to route, I can basically pay him $13,000 more than I could if I just got a hard money loan. And my holding costs would be lower. But
I think it's certainly a tactic that depends on the market cycle, and we're in that market cycle where it makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Very cool. Well, what do we got else? Do we want to kind of get down to the wrap-up questions, or you have any other questions, Nick?
I don't have any more written down. I've just been writing notes as I've been
I've been writing notes too. So Sean's always a very wealthy man of knowledge, and we always appreciate him for sure. So,
what do you think some of the most underappreciated strategies are, given this time where we have higher interest rates and people want a lot for their properties? Is there anything that you're seeing that people aren't doing much, that if you were more aggressive in a different, an acquisition phase in your life, that you would be focusing on?
A lot of it's just finding the right property that pencils. If you're a cash flow holder, and there may have to look for a while and turn over a lot of rocks to find it. I know when we first started, I turned and analyzed deals for 2 years before we finally pulled the trigger, and then it seemed like we were finding deals everywhere after we bought the first one. It's amazing how that works. I think they call it the reticular activating system. Starts to bring stuff to you, or at least let you see deals.
Once you buy, it becomes easier.
It does. And when we were buying stuff in the Midwest, we became known as the people that would close. So a lot of off-market deals rolled our way. So we basically were able to buy any multifamily property in that area that came up and it never hit the MLS. So
Yeah.
Wow.
Nice.
Good thing to be known for sure.
yeah, you get a lot of deal flow that way.
Yeah.
What's your biggest apartment that you have?
24 units.
24. Okay. What are your thoughts? Like what, as far as difficulty level, managing a 24 unit apartment versus maybe a duplex or a fourplex? What, if you were to rate like how much time is required to keep an eye on something like that versus a smaller multifamily? Assuming you have a manager as well.
Yeah. Well, the manager handles most of the work. You just get involved periodically. I go check on them twice a year, just really for something to do. It's not that the property manager's not doing their job. They're doing a great job.
Sure.
And then I'll knock off, a capital project that I really want to do, like paint fourplexes. I got a 20-unit complex, and it consists of 5 fourplexes on a cul-de-sac. We own the whole cul-de-sac. It's on 5 acres.
Nice.
And, they were kind of gross brown and yellow. And
Okay.
had their original paint job from 20 years ago, so they're starting to look sad. So
Yeah.
So you'll go visit twice a year
yeah.
to see these properties, and then on those visits, you'll also kind of determine what kind of improvements you want to plan for.
Yeah, if I look at a building and see it needs a new roof, I'll call up roofers and
Yeah.
get a bunch of bids and then get that underway.
And out of your gross cash flow, you are saving 20% of that for these repairs.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Nice. Yeah.
So
Does that go into a separate account or anything? When you get those deposits in, do you separate out
No,
where your money?
I could, but I don't. What I do
Okay.
separate is property taxes. So it comes into each individual company's LLC account, and then we have a separate account for property taxes, and we move a percentage every month into that. So when the big tax bill comes in the fall, that we can just write a check. Illinois is a little different than a lot of states in that, you can pay your property taxes twice, but the county sets the dates, and
Okay.
it's usually that you have 1 month, and then a lot of the counties want the second half the very next month. So it's like, why split it in two if it's that close?
You just
So
pay it off. Yeah.
we just write one check. It takes a while.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And so we do have separate accounts for that. When we do the owner draws, it transfers to a separate account from that. Insurance is a direct draw out of the LLC's account. So
Yeah.
just make sure we have a balance to cover the CapEx stuff.
Okay. When it comes to asset protection or asset organization, do you mostly just have LLCs, or do you have like a trust that owns these properties, or do you have like a general partnership that owns LLCs, and then you have the trust above that? Do you follow any of those recommendations that bigger investors kind of pitch here and there?
We do, and it's evolved over time.
Okay.
I initially started out with the NLLC,
Yeah.
and then our asset protection lawyer suggested we break it up more and started another LLC, and we ended up with a bunch of LLCs, and then we changed the structure to the trust owning the LLCs at one point, and that's morphed into a Wyoming holding company owning them, and the trust owning the Wyoming holding company.
Okay. So there's like how many layers? 4 layers or
At
so?
least 3.
Yeah.
Three,
So if
4.
somebody wanted to find out who owns these properties, how difficult is it for them?
It would take them a little bit more work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Okay.
Yeah,
Could anybody just find out through public records and then knock on your door in Idaho? Or would it be a little bit more involved?
they could find it, but it's set up for charging order protection and that kind of stuff. It takes a little more work for them.
Sure.
And with the new corporate transparency laws, the government says it's just for, preventing racketeering and that kind of stuff that goes into effect at the end of the year.
Yeah.
They say that now, but, Freedom of Information Act, I can see people getting it that way too.
Yeah, I met with my tax professional yesterday, and he just gave me the heads up. He's like, "Hey, so you know how you file annual reports with the state of Idaho for all your businesses? You're gonna have to start doing that for the feds now too, and you got to do it before the end of 2024, or you'll have a $500 fee per day until you do it."
Yeah,
Like,
it starts
ouch.
January 1, folks.
Yeah,
If
get
you've
started
got
right away.
existing entities, they give you a year to come in compliance, or they start fining you.
Yeah.
Start getting organized.
Yeah, they're concerned about racketeering and money laundering, they say, but
No, yeah. They just want their hand in everyone's pocket like everything else. So,
oh yeah, government's good at that.
oh yeah. One question about LLCs for you, Sean. So, do you set up the LLCs yourself, or do you have like a lawyer draft all your LLC documents for you?
No, we use an asset protection lawyer to do
Okay.
all that,
Cool.
and
Yep.
we use tax attorneys and CPAs. We have various professionals that we rely on.
Awesome.
And a lot of people will go out of their way to avoid talking to a lawyer or spending the money, and to me, it's money well spent.
Mm-hmm.
A few times
good
a year,
advice.
I'll have hear something and have an idea, and I'll call and schedule an hour to visit with my tax attorney and
Yeah.
get his ideas. And sometimes he says that's a good idea, let's do it. And sometimes he offers alternate suggestions, and we generally always follow his suggestions because he saved us a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you know when you don't have the right tax professional?
A few years ago, we went through and had to change CPA firms just because the one that we had didn't want to deal with the quantity of properties. They were also doing our bookkeeping at the time.
Gotcha.
They were fine when we were small, but they just wanted to do that little bit that they had been doing for years, and we wanted one firm to handle it all.
Sure.
And we went out and interviewed pretty much every CPA in Kootenai County and asked them a series of like 10 questions that we knew the answers to start with.
Sure.
And you would be surprised at the different answers you get.
Oh wow.
And just kind of screen them out by how many wrong answers they give you.
So out of the 10 or so that you interviewed, how many did you find to be pretty darn legit?
Like one or two.
Yikes, everybody. Yeah. Yeah, I've had to move tax professionals a couple of times.
Yeah. We actually had a book that we took in and handed to our current CPA and said, okay, we've decided to go with you. Here's what we're going to be doing. We're following this book written by this CPA and tax attorney. And we're going to do this strategies. I want you to read this book. And he said that was the first time anyone's ever done that to him.
Wow.
And only time.
Nice.
What was the book?
It was by Mark Kohler.
I love Mark.
And Matt Sorensen.
Okay. I was going to ask if it
talking to
was
a
from
mega
Mark
fan.
Kohler. Yeah.
Yeah, both very nice guys.
Yeah. That's funny because you said the book by a tax lawyer or CPA. I was like, I bet it's Mark, and lo and behold, it is.
Yeah, it was by Mark and Matt.
Yep.
Yeah, I've given him several of Mark Kohler's books, and then Matt Sorensen's self-directed IRA handbook. And
Yeah. I think it was actually you and Sarah Barb that actually turned me on to the self-directed IRA podcast with Matt and Mark. And then since then, I've started my self-directed IRA and planted that seed. So
yeah, we're starting a Roth conversion of ours right now. So
Okay.
over the next 5 years, we'll be converting our self-directed 401k to a Roth. Mm-hmm. And it's mostly for estate planning purposes.
awesome. Very cool.
Sweet. Jeremy, you got those final questions?
Yeah, I do. So yeah, we're at the hour mark of the show here, and this is typically where we wind down, Sean. I just have some predetermined questions that we kind of ask at the end to kind of wind down. The first one is, if you do have a real estate investing or business book you recommend every investor read, what would that be?
Well, everybody says Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That's what got me started. That's more of a mindset and how to look at the world.
Sure.
Mark Kohler's books are phenomenal.
Yeah.
Any of his, he's got 3 or 4.
The Tax and Legal Playbook, I think, is one.
Tax and
then-
Legal Playbook, what your CPA isn't telling
Yep.
you. Lawyers are liars.
No, but get yourself a good foundation. I think that's really good. Next question for you is, if you had $30 million gifted to one of your bank accounts, what would you spend it on?
30 million gifted to one of my bank accounts.
Yeah, just gifted.
Well, obviously the IRS is going to take a big chunk of it to start with.
Yep.
I would probably buy a large multifamily property.
Okay. Very cool. And if you had any advice for an investor looking for their first or second deal, I know we kind of touched on it earlier, but what would that advice be?
Do the due diligence and the analysis. Make sure it cash flows to start with, and then pull the trigger. There's plenty of people that die by analysis paralysis. All they do is analyze deals and what if, but they look at a lot of stuff, but they have no trigger finger and don't commit and do the deal.
Right. Got to take action.
You said something that took me a long time to learn, and you kind of snuck it in there, but you said cash flow to start with.
Yeah.
Because I myself included, and I know a lot of other people that they'll get themselves into projects that have a projection of, hey, it should cash flow this once I'm done with the property,
right?
Once we have it stable, and it could take a year to get there, or 2 years to get there. And it's taken me a while to realize, yeah, you should just buy stuff that cash flows day one. Why not?
Yeah, it gets a little hard to feed the alligator. I mean, it consumes your resources.
Sure.
But, there's been a lot of talk now about should you buy for appreciating assets or cash flow, and that's a personal choice.
Sure.
Initially I would go for the cash flow. That way you're safe, and consider the appreciation the cherry on top.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, you can always make more improvements, right?
Yeah.
The appreciation's really what's made us wealthy over time. But having that self-liquidating debt that the tenants are paying for is certainly the eighth wonder of the universe, in my opinion.
Yeah. Takes a balance of both for sure. Next question for you, Sean, is how do you define success?
Well, success is any time you accomplish a goal you've set out.
Nice. That's easy.
I'm still trying to decide what I want to be when I grow up. So.
Well, you have a lot more resources now to make whatever happen.
And freedom, too.
Yeah, freedom to do whatever you need. So,
yeah, that's the biggest thing it gives you is time freedom.
Very good. Next question is, if people wanted to learn more about you or find out more about you, where could they do that?
Well, come to any of the RIAs in North Idaho, and I'm usually at them if I'm in town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come say hi to Sean, ask him for a coffee, and see what you can make happen for sure. So,
don't ask him for a coffee. Buy him coffee.
Buy him a coffee. Ask him if he wants to go to coffee with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On your dollar.
Email is sean.dolan1@gmail.com.
Cool.
Not really on Facebook or Instagram or any of those things.
Sure.
That's why you have so much time on your hands.
Yeah. Sean spelled SHAWN, not the SEA.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Or the SHAU. There's like 3 different ways to spell that.
Yeah, it's SHAWN.
Gotcha.
SHAWN, everybody.
Awesome.
Yeah, my dad was Irish, but he spelled it phonetically instead of the Irish approach.
I love that. All right. Well, hey, thanks so much for joining us today, Sean. We definitely appreciate it. Nick, do you want to take us out of here?
Yeah. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that. A lot of wisdom here. Shawn Dolan, thanks for being here again.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And maybe we'll see you again in a few years. You never know.
Yeah. Well, it's been 4 years since the last time or something like that.
It's been close to that, I think. All right. Thanks, everyone. See you next week.
Thank you so much for checking out the Investor Shed podcast. If you enjoyed your time, make sure to leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow along on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram at The Investor Shed for shorts and promos about each episode. Do you want to be a guest or know someone who has great real estate investing advice and stories? Reach out to us at theinvestorshed@gmail.com.